Christmas is upon us, and what better time to have a brand new tier list video, but this time based on...
Mythic Plus logs and performance for DPS specs. Now I know that in Mythic Plus, people just rank kind of all the specs and tanks because it's actually important what kind of tanks and healers you get.
But we'll look at the DPS.
Yeah, we're just gonna look at the DPS, keep it consistent with our last video as well because it can get pretty long. And tanks are just like a few of them. I mean, if you're gonna play a tank, just play the one that you like, I think.
Yeah, that's true. And also this time around, the logs you'll see will appear much more balanced. So we ain't gonna have too many differences, at least in performance, but we're still gonna put them in the tier list based on these logs. So not based on our opinion or what we think is fun or whatever. It's strictly based on what we will see here on the performance. And by the way, you're gonna see a lot of footage in this video, and you're probably gonna see a lot of add-ons.
Oh shit, add-ons, man.
Yes, and you know, we have to tell the people what we use to manage all of our add-ons. You know, updating the stuff, searching for new stuff, deleting it all at once, or you know, in between. It's CurseForge, right? This is the add-on manager that we use. They've been kind enough to sponsor this video. I mean, to be honest, we don't have a problem with it.
I mean, if you've used Twitch app before, it's kind of like the same. I think it's actually a little bit better. It's a little bit with less bloat. Obviously, you don't have the streaming integrated feature, but every other option is the same. And now with the Shadowlands expansion, you can just /reload in game. You don't have to like leave the game every time, like Alt F4 or whatever, to get the add-ons updated. So yeah, CurseForge is...
It's an improvement. It's an improvement.
It's just easy, simple, and quick. I mean, that's what we want. And you can always turn it off. It doesn't have to run in the background if you heard anything around. I always have it shut down and
we update the add-ons
like 5 minutes every other day.
Exactly. It's really up to you. It also supports add-on creators, a whole bunch. Plus, everything that you see in the videos is being used through the CurseForge app, and you have a direct link in the description with all the add-ons we use. It's really easy. If you have the CurseForge client installed, you just go on the webpage, click on the add-on, it automatically installs for you. And that being said, let's get into the tier list.
Yes.
In Mythic Dungeons performances.
Pretty consistent, pretty
Looks
balanced.
balanced. But let's start it off with the Assassination Rogue, right? We started off last video with it. We'll start it off right now. So where do we see Assassination Rogue on the logs?
Well, alright, it's kind of at the bottom, and we do want to put it into D tier with a quick note is that Assassination performs worse than Sub and Outlaw, but not by, let's say, 4-tier margins.
Really tight.
The thing is, if you're playing a rogue and you want to perform at the highest of levels, you're probably gonna play maybe either your fun spec and then you don't really care about DPS list, or the best spec, which is Outlaw right now. And probably if, like, let's say half of the best Outlaw in the world played Assassination, you probably see Assassination higher up the list, but just because you have a much better option there, then an Outlaw is just probably because what's the passive that reduces the cooldown of things?
The blades, ruthless blades.
Yeah, you know what? That's probably why Outlaw is better than all the other two specs, because you get vanish quicker. You get
basically all the cooldowns you need, adrenaline rush, all of that. The thing is, man, what I'm thinking about is that when I was thinking about BFA and logs in BFA from Mythic Plus, Assassination Rogue still was under Outlaw. It was better than Sub, but it was nowhere near how it's looking right now. But again, this is really tight. I mean, if you look at the logs, the differences are not that big. Nevertheless, you want good AoE DPS as melee with a rogue, you want Outlaw. That's certain. It was the same in BFA too. All right, let's move along. So we have Assassination in D tier. Now let's get into Frost Death Knight. Now, Frost, you're a DK player.
Yeah, Frost Death Knight is so it's very hard to compete with Unholy because we're kind of taking it spec by spec. Like if you want to play Frost or Unholy, which one do you pick, right? Frost has generally decent kits. It's simple to play.
Much simpler.
It's quick to get into. It's hard to fuck up. But probably the damage cap is a little bit lower than Unholy, and hardly any spec that can compete with Unholy.
Yeah, I mean both
AoE capabilities.
Yeah, both AoE and single target. Unholy is just a beast right now. But speaking of a Frost Death Knight, I don't think it's a D tier.
No, I don't think we can put it in the same tier as. But I think C
is pretty legit. The thing about you may be thinking of playing a Death Knight. I think we can both say that if you're trying to get into the Death Knight class in fantasy, you could start off with Frost.
It still has the grip, the stun.
Because, you know, there's a lot of good stuff to it. It's just the thing, Unholy is much more complicated to play and pull off right. So if you're not decided yet on what DK spec to play, start it off with Frost and then slowly move towards Unholy. We're gonna have a guide for Unholy too pretty soon, so. But yeah, on Frost Death Knight is a C tier right now. Now let's check out Destrolock. Sorry, I was looking at the tier list. Never mind.
We actually have a specific order in mind, but Destrolock is. Well, it's doing better than what we had it in the raids last time around.
The thing is, it's above average right now, and you can really start to see like how all of these classes are starting to get more and more gear. That's really important. Legendaries to be crafted and all of that, and you can see like Destro was pretty good, man. I mean, those Chaos Balls split it up.
There's there are like there are a couple of packs that have like 2 ads or 3 ads.
The cleave.
So Havoc.
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 The cleave advantage is really strong on Destrolux for sure.
Yeah, so I would put it into B tier.
Definitely, and it's also like when you think about Destrolock, it's this. I think it's among the most fun casters to play just because of that fantasy of hurling a big ass
it's very fast-paced
bolt.
Yeah, you build quick, you spend quick.
And
it explodes. They did buff Chaos Ball. I don't know how hard the Chaos Ball hits now. Is it satisfying? Is it meaty?
Well, the thing is, I'm pretty sure it still hits pretty hard, and even if it doesn't hit like in BFA was, you know, a malfunction. It's still, you know, the whole fantasy of it, you know, building the shards, you know, making sure you have everything set up to have those proper bolts hit the way they do. It's also the animation, man, all the traveling effects. It's just, you just power up this
explosion. They're doing pretty cool things with the animation. So I gotta admit. And the toolkit is good. You always want Battle Res, you want that, and
portal to try to summon people.
Yeah, so. that's the important part, right? Because
I'm a lazy fuck.
He's an Ouroboros man, but yeah, Warlock is good. Sour Destro is the simpler one of the Warlock specs, and we're moving on.
Fury Warrior.
Oh, warriors are so sad in Shadowlands.
The Fury Warriors, man. The Fury Warriors,
but
Fury. So again, this is the same argument like in Frost Death Knight. You know, Frost, Unholy, Fury arms. Fury is easy to play, but right now it doesn't really perform not too good in single target, not too good in AoE. It's always about scaling, and I know we had a chat in the last tier list video where, you know, during the alpha and the beta it didn't really do too good, so it was kind of throwing a shadow.
It was underwhelming for me when I tested it.
Yeah, remember in the beta and alpha we pretty much had access to pretty good gear. So scaling aside, I really do believe Fury Warriors need a little bit of love in some department. They're still fun, no doubt, and you can still do good. But if you really want, you know, big ass damage,
it's on-demand, high octane damage. It's kind of like the Destro Warlock. You build quick, you spend quick. The damage consistency is high. It wasn't hit as bad with the AoE cap as other specs because Fury Warrior was probably the only one where it's a consistent AoE was 4 or 5 targets. So it couldn't go past that, which was why Arms usually took him over in the high keys. But Fury is seemingly doing a little bit better than Death Knight, but not too much. So I think C tier
still a C tier for sure. Still a C tier
is the way to go.
Yeah. If it were for me to choose, I would definitely go Fury first. You know, start to get the ifs and whats, and then move on to Arms if that was like, you know, a purpose on doing better in both single target.
I guess if we take that approach, I agree too.
All right, so C tier for Fury. Next up, we have the Arcane Mage, which is really weird because I'm looking at the logs. I know I played a couple of dungeons yesterday with Monkey and was playing with an Arcane Mage in the group. That dude was pumping some serious AoE damage.
Is pumping damage, man.
It's really interesting to see why is the logs.
I think it's a whole. What's keeping Arcane back is that if you want to, it's like kind of feral. It's like Primal Wrath. You either go AoE or you go single target. And you kind of have to sacrifice the other. Arcane is known for super high boss burst damage, single target burst damage. And it's in AoE, it's a simple rotation depending on how you build it. It has a lot of potential to have some really cool AoE interactions with like Arcane Orb and all that Nether Storm
and all that shit.
Things that never are used, but Arcane is I would say it's a little bit more complicated to play than Destro Warlock. It seems to perform pretty closely by looking at the logs of almost the same, and you know you kind of always want a mage there. So if you're like, ah man, I don't like Frost, I don't like Fire. Arcane is good, you're always gonna bring, you know, Arcane Intellect and Time Warp and cookies for your healer, which is always good, so...
And I feel overall, it is an easier spec to get into. Granted, Fire isn't as complicated, and you know, Frost, as much as we get hate for it, I still believe that Frost needs a little bit more attention to it when it comes to like pulling it off properly. Doesn't mean that Arcane is an easy spec to play, it just feels that it's easier. Definitely more complicated than Distro, as Flame said. Yeah. So I found it fun when I played it in BFA. I think it's still fun. A lot of players
It's a lot better. It's a lot
better, right? Yeah. So what do you think? B tier?
B tier for sure. Yeah.
All right.
So it's kind of the same performance.
Beautiful, beautiful. let's move on to the poster boy of Legion, Havoc Demon Hunter. Look at him go. Look at the motherfucker. I'm telling you, man.
It's the AoE consistency. It's the toolkit, which always was, because a lot of guys. So. You know, we all know that everybody, or at least the majority of people, likes to hate on Havoc because of its damage, but it's not really that, right? I never thought that Havoc had an issue with the damage. It was mostly of its toolkit.
Yeah, it was the least punishable spec.
Yeah, exactly.
Any mistake you would do, you were not as punished as other specs. That was the main thing of Havoc. You can get away with mistakes.
Yeah, the build was, regardless of single target AoE, you press the same buttons. So that was a little bit, oh come on man, if I'm playing Enhancement, I have to press a lot more Frost Shocks, or you have to place Primal Wrath.
Yeah, you're comparing it with Enhancement, come on,
well,
baby.
it's doing better, but the thing is, the strongest points of Havoc was a 1 minute blur that gave you what, 30% damage reduction and 50 dodge.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me that the boys in the tank community.
Yeah, it was stronger than all of the Vengeance cooldowns. Yeah. Vengeance, the tank one, right? So that was really weird. Those got nerfed and those were fine.
And it's also still a very fun spec to play, regardless of, you know, all the hate it gets and whatever, if it's easy or hard to pull off.
Yeah.
It's still a very fun spec to play because as Fury Warrior is high-paced, you know, it's a lot of moving around and a lot of access quick to all of your abilities, and that's really, really cool.
That's really cool. You don't get really bored, and I think with all of its utility, darkness, imprison, that you can help get skips. Remember, Mr. Tyrannicide with skips with that.
Yes.
And I think because of all of that, I think it deserves to be a higher tier than
A tier for sure. A tier for sure. Yeah.
Arcane,
yeah.
It's not. I mean, it's in terms of performance, it's not doing that much better than these two in terms of damage performance, but in terms of utility, I feel like
I mean,
it's a little bit of step up.
You have the Chaos brand, which is basically everybody's wet dream, no matter what, right?
Yeah,
the debuff.
If you're gonna have Boomkins and mages in your team, you probably want Havoc.
All right, what's next?
Next is the other warrior spec.
Arms Warrior, alrighty.
All right.
So Arms Warrior.
Look at the legs.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's above the middle ground, so it's obviously doing really good, and I cannot stress it's doing really good in the raids too, and in PvP. I think right now in PvP is the number one melee spec.
God, Jesus, man, like it was sitting like PvP aside.
Arms Warrior all around is a good performer. It's just for me, it's a question in regards to what do you prefer? Do you prefer like the more calculated approach, even though it is a warrior and all of that, but it requires a lot of planning ahead and being able to use all of your abilities properly and manage your rage and stuff like that, while Fury is just, you know,
Arms also has a different damage profile. It always excelled at two-target cleave because sweeping strikes and all that, and with the changes, it's actually wrecking two targets. I don't know, what am I thinking?
Better than Havoc for sure.
Like the two adds just before the first boss in Mr. Tinner Scythe. You have a lot of the dogs in Halls of Atonement, where you just like 2 or 3 dogs at the most, and you just want to clean them down really quick. I feel like Arms is doing a really good job of that. And then, of course, is the Warrior. You get Battle Shout.
Another useful class with a lot of the things.
With all the top marksmen and rogues, you kind of want a Battle Shout for them as well. So I feel like Arms is definitely into A tier as well with Havoc.
Oh yeah. It's more complete, and we're super happy that with the changes they made to Arms, because it was a little bit iffy in BFA having its damage profile always based on the deep wounds. It was weird because you were pressing so many buttons and trying to, you know, calculate everything, and the biggest damage you would do was a passive dot. No, it's good, it's good, it's good. Definitely, definitely an A tier. All right, let's move on to probably Flame's favorite, the Warlock spec, if I'm not mistaken.
Lore-wise, yes. I feel like it's very Demonology. I feel like it's one of the coolest thing. You just summon like the legion of demons with you, man. And I fell in love with it back in WoD when you could, you know, summon Doom Guards and it felt as permanent pets. I felt like, oh my god, that's pretty good. That wasn't just
best
Demonology,
fantasy of it, yeah, for sure. But look at it, man. It's above the pack. It's above the average.
It's above Destro. It's above the Mage's specs, well, except for
to
one.
the 2 mage, yeah.
And it's actually really close to Arms and Havoc. Now, obviously, we talked about the Warlock utility. We don't need to go over that again.
No, but this is a fun spec.
Yeah, Demonology is again, and it's way better for dungeons because it has, well, the turn is a shorter cooldown, so you kind of have it way more often for dangerous packs.
Yeah.
The AoE is super simple, or not super quick to do. Instead of having to build for it or wait for Havoc or dust stuff or so I feel like in terms of damage profile, Demo is doing better than this show. I would think it was doing better than an Affliction, but we'll get to that in a second.
So where would you put this?
I think it's 8 here. It's really close to Arms and Demon Hunter.
Definitely. I wouldn't expect this, to be honest, to have a Demolock in 8 tier from Mythic Plus, but there you go.
It's an interesting tier list.
Yeah, way different than what we were used to, at least in BFA. All right, next up, one of the most controversial specs of you know, Shadowlands Alpha and Beta, the Subtlety Rogue. Now, Subtlety Rogue is doing we're getting close to
way better than
top tier, definitely, and it had a lot of nerfs. But it's still doing really good.
The nerfs were to legendaries, actually.
Yeah, well, that was
a little bit to Shadow Strike, but not a lot.
No, that was the main gist of it. I wasn't expecting this, to be honest. I still believed, at least when we were going off from the beta to the Shadowlands expansion official launch, I still believe that Subtlety will be on the top Rogue specs. Apparently, it is not.
Oh, it's not the number one, but it's so close. It's like it's in the upper echelons.
If you have a Rogue right now, and you know you don't really like the outlaw fantasy, you know that Buccaneer, piratey, whatever, and you really enjoyed the original Rogue fantasy, which sneaky, stealthy, whatever, Subtlety is the go-to.
Really good.
You're doing performance-wise, you're doing super good in both single target and AOE, as you can see here, Mythic Plus. There's a ton of feeling of reward once you master the spec and pull it off properly. And this is, I cannot say this for all of the specs in the game, right? This is a high skill cap class or spec, which you will feel really good once you deliver all of these numbers and play it properly. So I would put it in A tier. It's a fun spec. It's not gimped. And again, we have to put into comparison with BFA because for the longest time, Subtlety Rogue in BFA was shit. That's the honest truth. And right now, it's doing good in all over the places, and it feels right. And with the changes to Shadow Dance and all of that, the addition of legendaries and Black Powder and all, it's really, really good. I cannot recommend it enough for people playing or thinking about playing a Rogue spec. Subtlety is the way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So performance-wise, based on the logs, it's definitely an A tier.
That's really good, really good. Now moving on to a range caster. The other Frost spec in the game. It is Frost Mage, and we did talk a little bit about it. It seems like it was a little bit broken in the beta. It was nerfed. I think where the complexity of Mage came through is back in BFA, you kind of lost the value of Iceland, so you kind of skipped, so you kind of ignored half of the procs. But if you take all of it into consideration, there's a little bit of a juggling there, and depending on your stats, I feel like sometimes some procs might be more important than the others. Sometimes you can ignore procs and just cap them while doing, I think Brain Freeze used to be like that. I'm not sure if it's still that way, but it can be that way depending on the gear. Then it's obviously a Mage, so Mage is good.
But performance-wise, it's a little bit iffy on close to the bottom.
It's close to Arcane, but not really, and it's probably because a lot of people don't just play Frost because the other two specs are just way better. I feel like C tier is okay. It's seemingly doing a little bit better than Warrior and DK. It's still solid.
C tier,
guys.
for sure.
Anything from C and up, we recommend you play if you want to have fun. Obviously, Assassination is still a good thing, but if you really want to perform, obviously, you're always going to look for the best of the best.
I mean, you look at the comparison between Assassination and Subtlety, at least. Well, there is a difference you can definitely see.
And And moving on.
Oh boy.
How the mighty have fallen. We said that again last time. But BM Hunter.
BM Hunter.
All right. I don't think BM is terribly bad. It still has, because I'm actually, my first alt right now, surprisingly, is a Hunter. I mostly leveled it for the videos, but yeah, it's had a lot of fun.
I know.
And I'm a BM Hunter at heart. I always like the fantasy of Beast. Just so you know that I'm not biased towards Marksman, because oh my god, everybody and their mom are playing Marksman now. But BM is again in the same sense as Fury, Frost, and Havoc. It's easy to play. It's fast paced. It's hard to punish. Although if you do mess up Frenzy, you will see a significant DPS loss. If you're like, oh, I don't want the melee hunter, I want the range hunter, it's currently the one that actually has the bloodlust, because Marksman doesn't really want to run pets.
Oh, right, yes.
And other than that, I mean, traps are really good. All the utility that Hunter has is really good.
That was the Rex and then all of that jazz. Yeah, the thing is, right, we all know BM is not a complicated spec to play. As Flame said, you basically, all you have to worry about is maintaining Frenzy. That being said, Beastcleave, sure. That being said, performance-wise, it is at the bottom of the list. It doesn't mean that it's not fun to play. It doesn't mean that it's not viable. Just out of all of these ranks, you would rather maybe, if you want to go, do higher keys and good numbers.
Yeah, you'd probably be
think about other hunter specs, right?
Other ranged hunter specs. What?
Yeah.
Right now it seems like a C tier would be.
It's definitely a C tier for now.
Would be the best. Don't get me wrong.
Might change.
I did play it and I did have a lot of damage, like decent enough to clear keys with a lot of time left. But obviously, it's not. You either want the best of the best or you want to have fun. Have fun. Yeah. Go BM. It's fine.
Go for yours, man. All right. Oh shit.
This would have been nice.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Everybody will see.
All right. So
the king is back.
Has returned. Fire Mage. Wow.
Oh man, Fire Mage. I didn't expect this. Like the first iteration we got for Fire Mage in the alpha. Remember? It was so clunky, and we didn't have the legendary. We didn't have the talent roll with the.
It was horrible. I actually hated it. I never liked the Fire Mage above the other two mage specs. It felt like it's too much reliance on the combustion. It's fun, but it's like outside of combustion, it's like. But it went through multiple changes throughout alpha and beta. But what was really giving us a lot of hope, a lot of Fire Mage's hope, was Flame Strike not being target capped.
Yes.
And that's kind of, I think that's one of the things that is propelling Mage. Obviously, it has all the Mage utility, Bloodlust and all that, Arcane Intellect.
Yeah, plus it's a really fun spec to play.
It is. With the legendaries, I saw Matt playing, like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's what I was about to say. Our editor, Matt, is playing a mage, and he's doing pretty good. And he said he's playing a mage all of his life. And my concern was, man, it doesn't really feel as smooth as it was in BFA because the corruption. Oh boy! But no, he says it's really fluid. It's really good. Plus, it delivers, so it's fun. Yeah. It has utility. It does the biggest damage now.
A plus that I can say about Fire Mage, which is not really a favorite spec of mine, is that now the AOE rotation is a bit more complex with Phoenix Flames.
Hell yeah!
And it's doing so much better than the other specs that I feel like it has to go S tier.
It has to go S tier for sure. I mean, it's the #1 spec right now in AOE Mythic Plus, so definitely deserves an S tier. Plus all of the arguments previous to this, right? It is fun, it does still float, it is useful. There you go. Wanted to play a mage spec? You can definitely try out Fire and start to learn it. It's really, really freaking good. And we're also gonna have a guide for it really shortly.
Soon. Check it out on our channel. Mythic.com/MarcelianOnline. You're already here. Why am I saying that? Let's go to the next spec.
Oh, the Flame main, baby. Oh yeah. Enhancement
Shaman. It's middle of the pack. It's really fun. Okay. We talked about Enhancement Shaman last time during the raid. I did get to play it a lot more with in higher keys, like above 10.
Man, you do good, man. You do really good AoE.
It's really good. The thing is, Enhancement Shaman still suffers from downtime. You can explode. You have a lot of burst, especially really high on-demand burst, and you will pull aggro. Unless you're playing with the Vengeance Demon Hunter. And even if you're playing with the Vengeance Demon Hunters, you will pull aggro Cabal who? Yes.
Cabal, yes.
It's a lot of bursts. It's a lot of fun. There's only one current build for Mythic Plus, which kind of sets you in a, kind of like a routine. So, but I guess a lot of specs have that. So it's maybe not a big deal, but it is a lot of fun. It's super engaging. You have to press all sorts of buttons. You have the Bloodlust. You're squishy though. That is my main. If I really have to say one bad thing about Enhancement is that it's way too squishy.
They die fast for sure. If something wrong happens, you lose the aggro as you said, or the mechanic isn't done properly, it's it's 10 times. But
I wanted to put it initially into B tier, but I feel like the utility that it brings with the stun and Wind Fury, it's a little bit above, and it's obviously just a smidge above Arcane and Warlock, and it seems like it's performing pretty close to Arms and the demo.
Yeah, it's there. It's
really
like
close. Really close. I feel like we're just gonna put it at the bottom of the A tier, right here, because sub is like it's not the same as sub, but I don't feel like it's in the same veins as Arcane.
Hey man, it's still an A tier.
Yeah,
we're keeping it there.
It's still A tier. Like anything in A tier, I feel like you can go really high. And Enhancement is actually top 28th DPS in the world in Mythic keys. So 28th.
All right, next
Elemental
for the Shaman. Elemental. You played Elemental, right?
Yeah, I played. Surprisingly very close to Enhancement though.
Yeah, it's like almost the same thing.
Almost the same thing. I think it's like a smidge above, but probably because Enhancement, I feel like Enhancement is a lot more difficult to pull off. And Elemental obviously has the advantage of being ranged, which gives you an indirect tankiness because you're just not in the meat of the things.
Yeah. Indirect defensiveness.
I feel like there's an argument to be said about Elemental being a little bit better because in dungeons most of the time you'll be playing with Primal Elementalists, which gives you the stronger Earth Ellie that can actually tank.
Oh yeah, that's so helpful.
You have Earth Ellie for all of the Shaman specs, but when it's Elemental, that thing can tank. Plus, it gives you a little defensive as well. So I think with all the arguments said, it's an A tier. It's a smidge about Enhancement, so I feel like like right here, just between.
Yeah, that's the place. That's the place,
should
baby.
Be pretty good.
Definitely worth picking it up if you enjoy the fantasy of the Shaman. It's a blast to play. I mean, if you choose the melee option, go Enhancement. If you choose, the caster, go Elemental. You won't do wrong in both Mythic Plus and.
And they're very fun. So they're super.
Oh baby,
Jesus, they're so juicy to look at.
I love all those procs and all those, those animations.
It's like a light show, man. It's always like that. It's always like that. And
love it. All right, let's move along to the Affliction Warlock. All right, the return of the Affliction Warlock.
Well, look at that, man. It's way up there.
Fourth place, am I seeing that? Fifth place. Fifth place, definitely.
And I think I was looking at the Radar.io. It's either the second or the third best. The second or third best DPS spec in the world is an Affliction Warlock.
Yeah, it also does really good in raids too.
It's pretty high.
Affliction Warlock is definitely above, the more complex specs to play.
It's not as straightforward. It's not as simple to pull off as demo and the show. I feel like it's doing a lot more. It's pretty close to sub. It's a little bit higher, so I think A tier is
definitely in front of sub for sure. At least performance-wise, and also not an easy one to pull off. It's great to master it. It's again one of those specs. Once you master it and you play it properly, the rewards are there. As you can see, the DPS profile and the performance profile from the logs clearly show this. And also, it's just a fun spec. It's a different one. If you got used to playing Destro Lock in BFA or even in Legion, maybe Affliction is a different beast. And I like that it's so different in terms of fantasy, like just rotting everybody up and just spreading all that love. It's beautiful. So,
spreading the love. Like a certain thing that's been keeping us indoors.
Don't say that. Hello.
Let's move on.
All right. What is it? Windwalker Monk.
All
well,
right.
This is a great surprise. Great surprise. Windwalker Monk. It was. Okay, in BFA, it would do good. I know I played a bunch of it in BFA. It was
always really high and consistent.
Yeah, AoE damage 100%. But the thing is, right now, Windwalker Monks are rising up the ladder in terms of performance in both dungeons and raids. And I feel, again, one of these specs which, you have to be a little bit more wary of to pull it off properly. They have a lot of buttons.
There's a specific rotation. You have to play the mastery, right?
Yeah, never fall off on there's a lot of things going on.
Whirling Dragon Punch, you can get killed in its animation.
Yeah, it happened here. The thing is, man, it's really good to see that this expansion brings all of these specs that require a little bit more to their rotation to pull off properly. They actually, when you do that right, you get the bigger numbers. I think it's always a good thing for this to happen. Not all the specs have this, all right? There's other specs that, don't really need that much attention to their rotation and it can do good. But Windwalker, in terms of mobility, utility, Ring of Peace, come on. Damage, off heals, CC, it's all there. Plus, it's super fun to play and I always love the fantasy of it. So
where do we put him, man?
It's still an A tier in my book. I mean,
Seems like it's doing better than Havoc, just like super close to sub. So let's put him there.
I mean, do you agree? Because I see you hovering over that B tier, man.
No, I agree. Surprisingly, we don't really have a lot of monks in our groups lately, but I have seen monks plays like. Plus, you have the physical damage debuff.
Oh yeah, the Mystic Touch. So that's also really good and useful. Definitely recommend playing a Windwalker as a main or a monk in general. You can do fine. All right. So the king of BFA. AoE, well, at least in Mythic Plus Invitationals.
Making big bursts of fire.
No, I was looking at Outlaw. Jesus, is Red Paladin. I was thinking about Outlaw, never mind.
So not really the king, but the squire.
it's actually a
Red. Red has received a couple of nerfs. Yes. It has the new talents, Execution Sentence, and Final Reckoning.
Yeah.
I think Final Reckoning is still pretty good, and I still see people use it. Probably Execution Sentence not as much because it's mostly a single target thing. So because that's the new stuff. But Red is high and consistent damage.
Really bursty, by the way.
Really bursty, and if you do not consistent, like bursty damage. But if you do play Final Reckoning, you have that 1 minute damage profile, which is good, which is probably gonna be there for like almost every pack, if not every pack, depending on how high the key is.
To be fair, the number of logs are pretty equal to each other, so it's mainly
so even if it's lower down, like it's still pretty good. Like we said, guys, everything C and up is gonna do really well. It can probably do 15s easy.
Yeah, 100%.
Just with the spec if you really know what you're doing.
100%. And trust me, a Red Paladin can really help in Tyrannical Weeks for that big burst on bosses. I think one of the biggest bursts in the game currently. It will help in Tyrannical for sure. Plus, it has a lot of utility too.
Pro Paladin has been dropping a little bit, and Holy Paladin has not been as great. So it's your only source of Devotion Aura if you don't have like any other Paladin spec. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Plus blessings. I mean,
and off heals as well. There's a lot. The short duration stun. There's a lot to the Paladin, but just like in the overall scheme of things in Mythic Plus right now, it does tend to look in a little bit in the bottom of the tier. That being said, you play Red Paladin, we put it into C tier, right?
I was actually thinking. I think so. It's a little bit above Frost Mage, but it's also close to Destro. Like
put it the first one. Like
probably the best. Like if you go almost to be old.
No, you can still really do good with Red Paladin. Just judging off these, it looks a little bit to the bottom. But nevertheless, let's move on. What I was saying prior to the Red Paladin.
Let's get back to it.
Yeah, let's get back to it. So the king of AoE damage, melee wise at least, but overall too.
I actually don't know if Outlaw does a lot of AoE damage. I mean, the king is probably fire, but the thing with Outlaw is you just press Blade Fury, boom, AoE damage, and that's it. That's the thing. It's
magic.
We're talking about Havoc having the same rotation in BFA, because I think Havoc playstyle changed a little bit now.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's kind of the same for Outlaw as well. The AoE is easy to access. You just press Blade Fury, and that's it. That's your AoE. The thing is, Outlaw did change a little bit, and sadly, Dreadblades are not that popular. It seems.
I remember that. But I was so happy.
The strongest suit that Outlaw had, and that's true for BFA as well. It was not because of the damage, although the damage was stupid. But even after it was nerfed 2 times, Outlaw was still way better than the other specs, is because of the utility. You have Gauge, which is really good to stop casts that you cannot kick.
You get access to all of your beneficial cooldowns much faster than any other rogue spec, right? Because of Ruthless Blade. So that on top of the utility and the AoE damage from Blade Flurry, it's definitely an S tier. It is fun to play. I personally don't like it as much because I'm not really into the vibe of the Buccaneer thing. My vibe for the rogue has always been either the assassination type thing or the subtle sneaky
I get
boy.
it. The WoW, the Warcraft rogue is the stealthy, sneaky ones. Yeah. I feel like I know why they went with the outlaw, and I kind of like it because you don't have a pirate like a jackass that just goes and fucks people's day up. And I think that's what the outlaw was supposed to be.
I get it. I get the philosophy. It's fine. So if you want to play it, be on the top of the meters, definitely go outlaw. You'll be
pretty good. And it's a big difference between the other rogue specs.
All right. Another controversial, not really, but the fixed spec. The fixed spec of Shadowlands. The Shadow Priest. All right, Shadow Priest. Do you remember how Shadow Priest was doing in BFA AoE?
The Shadow Priest, it was doing really good. We have one of our top patrons, one of our biggest supporters for our channel, San. who plays Shadow Priest and was doing really good. Like whenever we had a Shadow Priest in our team, it was like, man, why are people playing Shadow Priest? But whenever Sam was bringing it,
it was stopping
hard.
everybody.
We were playing like meta specs. It was hard to out DPS, and that just goes to show that you can, if you're really good at what you're doing, you can really pull off. And the thing with Shadow Priest in BFA was that it was scaling really highly with crit and haste.
I know.
If you had those, like nothing else mattered. And right now it changed a little bit in Shadowlands. With the Devouring Plague, Searing Nightmares, and all the things, and Surrender to Madness. People are playing Surrender to Madness.
Yes,
and I did play with Sand and a couple of dungeons as well. Shadow Priest is boss in damage. Obviously, you get the Fortitude if you don't have a Discipline or a Holy Priest.
Definitely an A tier right now. It's good, man. It's good, and it fulfills that fantasy of the Shadow Priest much more than it did in BFA. There's people that are on the fence with all of the changes. They prefer the BFA version. Others prefer the other. We get that, but overall, objectively, if you look at the numbers, it's doing good. And you can be top damage, as Flame said. We had our Patreon to show that.
There's no more ramping that you need to do for like 45 seconds before you actually do that.
Pretty good. Next up is one of our all-time favorites, Survival Hunter, which has seen better times in raids, but not the best in AoE. Although it does perform better than Red Paladins and Furiors and such.
Not by too much, but Red's kind of close to Red Paladin and brings the Hunter.
It's actually, I think, almost equal.
I think the difference between Survival and Red is that people play Marksman way more than Survival, whereas other Paladins don't really have another DPS option. So I feel like Survival could have a higher potential. I've seen some Survivals pump.
I'm really curious if Kerathan is still playing his Survival, or did he remain for Holy. We'll have to ask him.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of information about Survival because everybody and their mom are playing Marksman right now.
Of course they are.
But obviously you do have Bloodlust with Survival because Survival runs a pet. And the traps and everything are probably a little bit easier to pull off since you're always like right next to the thing.
But again, it's I think it's the most complex out of the Hunter specs. This is one example, like as opposed to Subtlety and Affliction and Windwalker, this is one example of a spec where when you master its rotation and all of its intricacies, you don't get as much as a higher reward.
The payoff is not that great. So I think bottom of the B tier is probably...
it's a decent place to have Survival for sure. And
it's still like middle of the pack. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, if you want to go for it, then go for it. It's not as bad as it used to be, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, moving along, the kitty cat, baby, Feral Druid.
How do you feel on the cat, man?
I always said this, it was the same feeling all the time. I have my moments. Usually, if I have like a really high octane class that can melt AoE, I don't have the time to have all of my ticks go and start pumping the damage. I can, Feral can do decent in AoE damage. I think it really goes in really big keys well.
Yeah.
And single target in like bosses, Tyrannical, you're gonna be a beast.
So I wanted to actually ask you this because we did a couple of 10s and higher, but the mobs we played in bolster, so you couldn't really pull a lot.
Yeah.
But I felt like I don't know if it happened always when you had Convoke, but you were pumping serious damage, and I think when mobs were like lasting for a longer time.
That's what I'm saying. That's the main thing of ferals in Mythic keys, right? You have to have the mobs last a little bit longer. It's just how it works, how the ticks work. This will change eventually in time with haste and more gear. But once again, Feral is one of the funnest specs to play. Pulled off properly, gives you big ass rewards. If you're doing average in AoE, when you get to the boss, you'll melt that shit. And again, it's useful, man. You have balance affinity with Typhoon. You have like entangling roots. It's really useful in the Mist of Tyrannocide, where you have to like always CC that Vulpine that spawns.
Oh, the tag mechanic.
You basically you have all the really time instant roots. You use that, so there's a lot of things going for it. I cannot praise it enough.
And again, I think the Feral is suffering from the same argument as Survival, where a lot more people are playing Boomkin because one, it's ranged. I was thinking if we should put it into C tier, but I don't think we'll be doing it. No, I'm sorry, B tier, but I don't think we will be doing it enough justice. But you know how it feels. I
would actually still keep it into B tier for Mythic Plus, like the first one over there. You know, it's doing that. Its damage in the logs is a little bit lower than the middle pack. That's one thing. But again, this is really dependent on how your tank pulls. You know how the group needs to understand how it works if you want to get big numbers. That being said, you'll be fine with Feral. Problem is community perception, but this is not the video for that.
Yeah, not the video for that. And we're moving on. We're closing in. Oh, we're getting
Marksman Hunter.
To hear the big boys. We've talked about this, and I have to admit, like, man,
yeah, I know you played
Marksman is doing pretty good.
No shit, Nicholas.
I'm not a big Marksman player. I like it. It's a fun spec. I've never played it enough for me to say like, oh, I know my shit. But I was DPSing people way better geared than me, and people that knew how to play their stuff, man. So I feel like Marksman is just getting really well, and this is without Wild Spirits. Wild Spirits is also I think it's
adding
probably
to the problem.
I think if something is gonna happen to Marksman, it's probably gonna start with Wild Spirits.
Oh yeah.
It's doing a little bit way too much damage, and it's a little bit sad that if you want to go Marksman and you want to do damage, Night Fae and no arguments there. I think Kyrian was close, but I don't know if it's still scaling as well. Once you have volley up.
Oh yeah, I've seen that shit, man. It's disgusting.
I cannot not put it into S tier. I feel like Marksman is outperforming a lot of the specs, which is nice. We hope that we can keep Marksman there as a top hunter spec because we had BM for a long time.
Yeah, man, no, it's time to shine, but my dream is to see Survival up there.
Oh, once we have Survival this year,
it's gonna be good times. Keeping it into S tier. All right, what's next?
Next is another top contender that is kind of keeping Ferals a little bit in the shadow.
Boomkins. Oh yeah.
With all the memes that have been going around.
Man, I remember like all the talks we had in alpha and beta about Boomkin, and everybody and their mother was
initially
complaining.
It was pretty good, but then it got nerfed a little bit too much, and it was like, oh, another nerf, oh, another nerf, oh, another nerf. But obviously the mechanics change for Boomkin. The eclipses are basically, I mean, it's the old playstyle where it's not as much RNG. It's a little bit on the other side where it's a little bit too predictable and you kind of already know the next 10 buttons you're gonna be pressing, but Starfall is really fun now.
Yeah, I'll maintain my argument regarding Boomkin. They tend to, they do great AoE damage, but once they pop their Convoke, I think Convoke right now does the biggest damage for Boomkin, if I'm not mistaken. Like,
aren't you doing that though?
I'm doing that, but I can never compete. Like if a Boomkin pops Convoke, there's just no way to compete with that.
I think it's S tier.
Definitely an S tier, yeah, definitely an S tier. So I mean, you know, if you want the same argument, right? With shamans, if you want the caster version, Boomkin will be mwah. If you want the melee version, Fer will be really good.
But yeah, I think Boomkin speaks for itself. It's a fun spec. It has the Druid utility and its range. So what else do you need?
All right, last on the list, the unholiest of classes. The
boy that received probably the most amount of nerfs so far, because it was a little bit stupid the way it scaled. But even with that, Unholy is still pretty high up there, and it's probably propped up a lot because of how the AoE scales with Unholy with Bursting Swords. It's pretty high, and if you can not play Bursting Swords if you want. Go Unholy Blind is still pretty good, and it seems it's really high up there. It's not S tier. It's no longer S tier, but I think a solid top. A
solid A tier for sure. A solid A for sure. Another spec that delivers great results in Mythic Plus and single target raids or whatever.
Battle res comes with battle res.
Oh yeah. Well, we cannot contest the utility. I feel. Out of all of the DK specs, well, out of the two DPS specs, I feel Unholy, is more deserving of...
It's the more complicated one.
Yeah, it's the more complicated
Satisfying when you pull off, though.
Yeah, the same example as, Sub Rogue and Windwalker and Feral and whatever. It deserves, a higher spot on the list just because in order to do well, you really have to master it well. You're living a DK, right? We're getting into it, right?
I already have it. Unholy is doing pretty well. I'm still gearing my DK. So far, but we're gonna have some DK,
some juicy stuff for you all. But this is it. This is the tier list. This is based on the latest, today's Mythic Plus logs.
Once we're recording and publishing, obviously things might change.
They might change.
We have actually class balance almost every week. I don't think we've skipped a week yet.
Yeah, I don't think Blizzard will celebrate Christmas this year.
So for everybody who were scared that Unholy got too many nerfs, obviously it's still high up there. And like we said, everything starting with like Frost DK, you're gonna do just fine. Assassination might, if it's that bad of a damage performance class, you might suffer a little bit, but I don't think it's enough for you not to enjoy the spec.
Yeah, definitely. All and any of these specs here can do really good if played properly. That being said, it's interesting to see who's on top, who's at the bottom. We'll try to be consistent with these types of videos, you know, once every 2 weeks or something. We'll do an update for these, for raids or Mythic Plus, if you guys enjoy them, obviously. That being said, we want to thank our Patreons first of all for all of their support. Thank you so much, guys. It means the world to us. You've been able to contribute to making a lot of, you know, getting back into the class guides, doing all of these long ass tier list videos. We're gonna get back into the MoCast podcast. We're gonna go into the WoW Weekly WoW show. Yes. You also enabled us to have Matt, you know, our third editor here. Editor.
And of course, we cannot forget our Twitch supporters, subs, and all of the tippers there.
And followers.
It's amazing. The amount of support that you guys have given us is pretty cool, because we do like to stream a lot. Twitch.tv/MarcelianOnline, where we stream our raids and our keys and all of that good jazz. Thank you very much. So you can check it out and join in on the fun and the bands.
Thank you for watching the video so far. Have a lovely holiday season.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Bye-bye!
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.